and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 89. Chen Tian, who was pierced through his chest in front of him, suddenly turned into a dot of golden light, which was easily blown away by the wind. How did you do it? You've been to Asgard before? Loki turned back abruptly and looked at Chen Tian, who was safe and sound behind him, his eyes flickering in amazement. It's just to blame on your inferior magic, it's so easy to learn. I lifted my eyelids and saw through everything. Chen Tian shrugged his shoulders and said nonchalantly. Presumptuous. My magic was taught by my mother, who is the best witch in the 9 realms. Loki scolded angrily when he heard this. Hearing that someone insulted him behind the scenes, the whole person was furious, his feminine and handsome face was a little distorted. And he swung his blade again and stabbed towards Chen Tian without thinking. The blade of the sword, condensed by magic, flashed cold, broke through the air silently, and instantly stabbed in front of Chen Tian. Next second, syllable, Chen Tian snapped his fingers. The terrifying power burst out from the fingers, and the air on the fingertips was directly compressed to the extreme, directly bursting out like an invisible bullet. Ah! The strong air instantly bounced onto Loki's wrist, and in the sound of bones shattering, he exhaled in pain, and the blade in his hand fell off. However, he was a god after all, and the injuries he suffered were instantly repaired and healed under the majestic magical energy. It's just that Loki repaired the wound on his hand before he could come back to his senses. A large hand was already clasped on his face. You, too weak. Chen Tian's deep voice gently fell in his ears. Followed by, Loki felt a terrifying force like a mountain collapsing in his face, and his entire body was thrown backwards by the skull. Rumble. The back of Loki's head collided violently with the ground, and suddenly the ground was smashed out of a deep pit, full of cracks. Gods, but so. Chen Tian withdrew the hand that was pressed on Loki's face, slowly stood up straight, and looked down at the latter lying down from high to low. Damn it. Loki endured a severe headache and gritted his teeth. He already understood that he was not an opponent at all, and did not hesitate to launch the magic of escape. The whole body suddenly scattered into a little green light, directly drifted into the rainstorm outside the tent, and then recondensed. Damn scum, the wrath of the gods will not forgive you. Loki said a cruel word to Chen Tian, and then quickly used magic to distort the space beside him, stepped into it, and disappeared into the scene. Let you go for now. Chen Tian has the same Asgardian magic as Loki, and it is easy to catch up with the latter. 10,000 steps back, as long as he bursts super speed, he can also interrupt the other party before Loki can cast magic. However, Chen Tian did not choose to chase. After all, tomorrow it will depend on Loki to do things in order to make Thor, the god of thunder, reawaken the power of the gods. Otherwise, even if the bloodline of Thor is copied now, it is just the bloodline of ordinary earthlings. However, I also have to admire the strength of Odin's divine power. Thinking of this, Chen Tian not only muttered, just by relying on simple spells, Thor can be reduced to a mortal. Thinking, there was a sudden sound of hasty footsteps outside the tent. It was Agent Hill with the people of the task force and rushed over. Since Loki used magic to interfere with the surveillance before, they are only now seeing the real situation here through the surveillance screen. Agent Hill reacted and led the people closer to this side. Merely, when Hill entered the tent, Chen Tian had long since disappeared. On the way back, Thor, the god of thunder, looked very sad, and his face was extremely miserable. He has lost the approval of Mjolnir and is no longer an Asgardian god. You know, before he was banished, Thor, the god of thunder, was already preparing to succeed Asgard and become the king of the entire god world. Such a gap is difficult for him to accept. I am not recognized by Mjolnir, without divine power, I am no longer a god. Thor leaned against the window and muttered dejectedly. Simple, Foster had to drive while comforting all the way. And Chen Tian sat next to him silently, he didn't mean to comfort Thor. It's easy to make friends with this guy with muscles in his head, just fight side by side or beat him. Or, there is a saying among Marvel fans that Thor has beer in his blood. Thereupon, after returning to town, Chen Tian and meteorologist Eric took Thor to a nearby bar. Chen Tian took the lead to the big guys, and one person lit a cup of depth charges. At first, the first glass of wine is down. Thor was still immersed in grief. Until Chen Tian asked the front desk to take out a stronger wine, Thor was a little surprised. This wine was almost meaningless compared to Asgard. But it is really fierce. And it's flavorful. So, he directly poured it up. It was fine at first. Later, Thor saw Chen Tian pouring several large cups. Not to be outdone, he drank it along. After all, Thor thought that Asgard was not drunk in 1,000 cups, how could he show weakness to a Midgard? As for Eric, he was even more reluctant to admit defeat. This scientist does not look like a literati, but he does not show weakness in his work. I drank an unknown number of cups. Until 3 people fell down too. This contest between drinks and symbolic men was over, and the person who did not fall was naturally Chen Tian. He has Krypton blood, and this amount of alcohol is simply difficult. In the end, Chen Tian sent the 3 drunk back, during which the 2 did not forget to brag to each other. All words that only drunkards can understand. When Chen Tian returned to the hotel, it was late at night. He noticed that Wanda next door had not woken up. It seems that this girl is tired today. Quote, Chen Tian muttered, did not choose to turn on the light, and sat directly on the edge of the bed. Then, he raised his hand. In the entire dimly lit room where he was alone, only the golden shimmer of magic changed between his palms. Chen Tian felt the change after an extra magical ability in his body, and his expression changed, and he felt strange. Because he found that in the body, the magic element and the Krypton bloodline seemed to have some kind of special interaction. They are mutually exclusive. And that's exactly what happened. Kryptonian bloodlines can only absorb one type of energy at a time, and that is stellar energy. This is also the reason why the Kryptonian bloodline in Chen Tian's body will repel the magic energy at this moment. I remember where I seem to have heard the saying that Da Chao is full of material resistance, but there is zero magic resistance. Chen Tian felt the changes in his body and thought slightly, but it seems that this is not the case. As a matter of fact, Da Chao is not really a zero magic resistance. In the manga, he also used to cast magical elements, because the stellar energy in the big superbody of that universe was replaced by magical energy. Therefore, the source of energy of Da Chao is not limited to stellar energy. Chapter 1 Previous Chapter 89 186